So psilocybin is one of the classic psychedelics being dimethyltryptamine, LSD, psilocybin, and mescaline. Those are the ones that have been around forever. And they are what's similar about all of them is there's an element of spirituality and disorientation of the ego. So though that sort of connects those four molecules, but let's talk about psilocybin specifically. It's why it's popular for research is not necessarily because it's the most effective. The researchers who started looking at psychedelics wanted to choose a molecule that would pass regulatory authority. And it's interesting because during the period of time between 1950 and 1967, when researchers had access to mescaline, psilocybin, and LSD, they eventually wound up working with LSD. And the researchers of today knew that. And they intentionally didn't choose LSD. They chose psilocybin because, quite frankly, the regulators didn't know what it was. And it didn't have the social taboo that LSD had. Now, it's not that different from LSD as an experience. If I think about the elements of the classics, they are, at a sufficient dose, a very spiritual experience. There's also an element of ego disorientation. One's sense of self can change dramatically, and eventually, at a sufficient dosage, one's ego, one's sense of self is dissolved, and it goes from disorientation to dissolution. And that can be challenging for people, but also helpful in the process of treatment for a variety of disorders. Now, it's interesting. I make a distinction between psilocybin and magic mushrooms, because magic mushrooms often refer to cubensis mushrooms, which are the most widely grown by underground people and available. And there is a huge debate in the community as to whether or not mushrooms are better than synthetic psilocybin. Now, I will weigh into that debate, recognizing that many people who are very knowledgeable, who I trust and respect, disagree with me. So the two sides of the debate is synthetic psilocybin is preferable because you can absolutely give known dosages, and regulatory authorities don't like unknown dosages. So if you want to turn a molecule into a medicine through Health Canada or the FDA, you have to be able to tell somebody exactly what dosage and what purity that you're giving. It has to be replicatable. Synthetic psilocybin is replicatable. Mushrooms are not. Mushrooms are a combination of molecules. There's psilocin, psilocybin, baeocystin, norbaeocystin, and other alkaloids that may influence the experience. Now, it's interesting. That's called the entourage effect. Now, the entourage effect really was discussed intensely during the world of cannabis, because when people smoke or eat cannabis, they take THC, they take CBD, they take a range of different terpenes. And when pharmaceutical companies took THC out, something like Marinol, and offered it to people, it was not as effective. And we know that, the research on that is now conclusive, that the whole plant product of cannabis was more effective than THC alone. The entourage effect worked well with cannabis. So my observation is those particular combinations of molecules have a greater health efficacy, but that doesn't apply to all organisms. Like, mushrooms are not plants, they're fungi. So that doesn't apply necessarily to fungi. I don't personally believe that baeocystin and norbaeocystin add anything to psilocybin. So synthetic psilocybin is, quite frankly, an absolutely beautiful experience by itself. And the other molecules in it add complexity, but they don't necessarily amplify the experience at all. I've heard the argument that mushrooms are kind of delayed in the gut, so it's not as fast to come on. It's a slower come on and it's a slower come off, and that's more gentle for people. My response to that argument is you can formulate synthetic psilocybin so it dissolves more slowly in the stomach. So it can have as fast or as slow come on and come off as you want. So my own personal belief is that synthetic psilocybin will pass the regulatory authorities. And eventually, when psychedelics become legalized, that will be the one that people use. Personally, I believe that people should be given a choice. And so, yes, I think people at the end of the day, choice is important, and people should have a choice of dried mushrooms, not synthetics, but extracts that can produce some level of consistency of dosage. But also, when you're doing the extract, you're pulling out the other alkaloids as well. So they're still mixed alkaloids. It's not pure synthetic. And essentially, it comes down to personal choice. And I think there should be lots of personal choice. Yes. For my way of thinking, the ultimate best use of psilocybin is end-of-life anxiety. Psilocybin is a profound spiritual experience when done appropriately. And so when you're dying, you really want to meet your maker. You want to make your peace with the entire universe, or your creator, whoever you refer that person to be. You need to go and meet that deity, that saint, whatever it is, however your belief system is. And it's interesting just to reflect for a second. When people who are profoundly spiritual take a psychedelic, they meet the spiritual entity that they believe in. If you're a Buddhist, you find the Buddha. If you're a Christian, you find Christ. If you're an agnostic, you find the entire universe. So psilocybin tends to amplify and nurture and support somebody's belief systems around spirituality, and really add color to the black and white image that they already have as to how they understand the world. So psilocybin is, for me, the ideal treatment is for end-of-life anxiety. It allows you to meet your maker, make your peace, and move on with equanimity.